before they even noticed, but I had to go, and then they turned around. Can't anymore.
Every now and then with my kids
You did.
in the shop, somebody will come up behind somebody who's actually operating a saw.
Ooh, my dad had one done too.
No,
that's not
Not funny.
Not a good one.
All right, 7 o'clock time now for city council meeting. And there we go. And it is time for that now. Let's go to city council with Mayor Jeremy Gill.
Okay, I call to order this Grand Haven City Council special work session. Linda, do you want to call the roll, please?
Manetza?
Here.
Ruger?
Here.
Scott?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
McCaleb?
Here. We have one item on our work session agenda this evening, and that is the Chamber Economic Development Report. We're going to ask Elizabeth Butler of the Chamber to come and make her presentation.
Okay, thank you for having me. Thank you for approving the contract 2 weeks ago for our economic development services. Coming back today to go in a little more in depth on what we have been doing, what we are doing, and what we will be doing. As a reminder, I am a shared service for all 5 units of government for economic development. So we all have a piece of the pie when it comes to Northwest Ottawa County. So what have we done for the city of Grand Haven? So there's many things over the past 3 years that we have done. And in one of your handouts, you'll see that I gave you all handouts. I forgot to mention that. The handout that looks like this shows what we have, all the detail of what we have been doing over the past 3 years for our economic development contract. But to kind of just high level summarize some of the things that we've been doing, we've been going on manufacturing retention visits. We've been making the connections, being there for them when they need it, when they need resources. We've been helping out with property tax abatements. For example, SPI Pharma 2 weeks ago. We hold roundtables every month or every other month, depending on which one it is, for our HR managers or for manufacturing executives. They share best practices and try to find common solutions for common problems. General business assistance, we help out whenever a company needs help with business, whether they're a startup or whether they're already established. We're also there to help with resource matching. So when a company needs a connection, we're there to be the connector. We also have access to available property sites. So if there's somebody in the area who needs a different location or a new location, we're there. We can help guide them on what's available. Job training grants. We work, right now is a busy season for job training grants. Companies will come to us, and Nancy Mangos primarily, and she helps write the grants for that, and she has a goal of how many she tries to write each year with the companies. Manufacturers wage survey is another one, where this past spring we surveyed all the manufacturers to what their starting wages are to help find what that competitive wage is for our area. We help with business startup, and then the workforce of the future, making sure that pipeline is filled going forward. So that's just a snapshot. You guys have the full list of what we've been doing over the past 3 years for our past contract. This one's a little hard to read, but what it is this is a slice of how economic development is funded in Northwest Ottawa County. You can see the city of Grand Haven up there, and they represent, I believe, 21% of the fair share. Grand Haven Township, they represent the biggest share of 27%. Village of Spring Lake is about 5%. Spring Lake Township is 22%, Ferrysburg is 7%, and then we have a slice of the pie too. We're also invested in economic development, and so we're putting in 20% of the cost of economic development. So we talked about a little bit about what we have worked on in the past year. So what are we working on right now? So we're working, as I mentioned earlier, we're working on job training grants. It's the busy season for that. So lots of companies are going after the dollars right now to educate their workforce. We're helping to support workforce of the future. There's some programs up there I listed. Boomerang, for example, was just last week at Grand Haven High School. We brought in about 800 high school seniors from area schools and connected them with area businesses. This is so they can fly away, they can learn, and then they can return back to Grand Haven and bring that knowledge base back here. Homegrown is another program that we're doing with the elementary students to introduce them into our industry here, where they help work on real life problems. I've been helping out with airport discussions, having manufacturing retention visits. The business intelligence report, that's the report that I put right here, the trifold on, that everybody has. This is an annual report that we partner with Lakeshore Advantage down in Holland, and together we interviewed 120 area executives in Ottawa County and Allegan County, and we asked them all the same questions. And so then we take that data and it's tabulated and come up with statistics, and it helps us to understand where to put our resources. So the report in front of you is for, again, Ottawa and Allegan County. My next step is to take all the data and dig down and do Northwest Ottawa County. What do we look like? Are we a little bit different than Southern Ottawa County or Allegan, or are we pretty much in line? So that's another thing that we do. Leadership Connect, next month is our local economy day, so we plug the students into that. We've been having depot discussions, Jingle Bell Parade planning. I'm planning the economic forecast breakfast right now, which is going to be held in February, but Dr. Paul Isley from Grand Valley is going to come, and we do a pre-assessment, but then we share with the community what the forecast is for Northwest Ottawa County. Let's see, we do segment analysis. This is new for us. So we're looking at each of the segments of the different types of businesses, whether it's manufacturing, retail, healthcare, service, they're all different. And how can we better serve each one of those, because they're all unique. They all have different, they value different things. Each value proposition for each one is going to be different. So we're working intentionally with that right now to better serve our community. Let's see, I've been talking with the DDA about helping them with some strategic planning. I have a background in strategic planning, and so looking to see if that's a fit too. And we've been doing a lot of implementation of our new strategic plan. I've led the chamber board and staff through strategic planning for us, so we're having a new look on us. So that's what we're working on right now. So what are we going to be working on? So our contract, so what I did was I actually pulled the City of Grand Haven's Economic Development Strategic Plan. And I took the things that directly relate to the chamber and where we're marked as the lead. And so these are the things that we are or should be working on. So support the chamber's number 5G. Each one has a line item in this strategic plan. 5G, support the chamber's strategic economic plan for economic development and business services and retention. Yeah, that one's ongoing. You guys do support us there. 6E, partner with the Tri-Cities to create a marketing and branding program for the community. These are, by the way, your one-year goals that you have set for us to do. And so, Ashley, can you cue up that video? We have actually completed this one. We have some fun videos that they have put together. I'm going to share one with you right now.
And this is your backyard with that lovely water feature I mentioned.
And great schools, Michigan's top 10%.
And the job market? Manufacturing.
Healthcare, creative industries. And Coastal Living magazine calls Grand Haven the happiest seaside town in America.
We'll take it.
Grand Haven. Come to play, you'll want to stay.
These videos, we have there's a series of videos. I think there's 3 videos. They have like fall, winter, I think maybe spring. And these videos are to help attract talent to the area, attract workers to the area, attract people to visit our area and hopefully live here, you know. So that's just a sample of what we did there. I wanted to share that. Work with Ottawa County and NORA to develop countywide map of all the recreation amenities. So this one is ongoing, hasn't been completely finished yet, but we are actually, in a twist to this, we have a quarterly task force that collaborates with each other that has the YMCA, NORA, 4 Points, and Spring Lake Aquatic Center. And so they are, although they don't have the countywide map done, but they are actively working on this for everyone. And then research options available to reuse outdated buildings. This item it's always a work in process, right? The Stanco building or the Jackson Flats building, that's an example of this one. If you go on to the 2 to 3 year goals, this is what has been set out. Support and encourage the development of senior housing and assisted living facilities to meet expected demands. Continue to proactively use brownfield incentives. Evaluate and implement a feasible community bicycle sharing program. Explore the opportunity to develop a commercial-based kitchen incubator. So none of these have been worked on yet, but this is coming up in the next 2 years is the desire for us to work on these. Explore the new opportunity to develop a local warehouse processing and cold storage facility. Support NORA initiatives for enhanced recreational facilities or regional recreation. And then support and promote convenient access to local food sources such as roadside stands, edible landscaping, and front yard gardens. Partnering with local restaurants and grocers to expand and advertise the use of fresh and healthy foods. I believe a little bit of this has been touched on in our visitor's guide, but that's still a goal to be achieved. And then the long-term goals, the 3 to 5 year goals that have been identified: establish the state-of-the-art higher education and training facilities in the community, focusing on increasing the brain power, job creation, and retention. And then improve access to high-speed and reliable wireless broadband service throughout the community. These have, the broadband and wireless, I know a survey had gone out and we participated in a survey a while ago, but no real traction has happened on this one. So then there's ongoing goals that there is, 1 year, 2 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years plus, and then there's goals that are just consistently ongoing, and so that's what this bucket represents. So continue to proactively use brownfield incentives to spur high quality redevelopment and mixed use. Encourage revaluation of the reuse of existing industrial buildings. And then strengthen the collaboration between area schools and the local business community. So if you think about that one's done. Develop the curriculum with local schools and universities for students to learn about careers in manufacturing and agriculture. So with all except of 7A on that screen, we're encourage evaluation of the reuse of existing industrial buildings. We have been doing that and checking the boxes there. And to continue on with the ongoing goals, assure the development of a well-prepared and educated youth ready to compete in the global knowledge economy. We are doing that with our business education partnerships and with the youth programs that we have with the schools. And on the flip side, assure the development of a well-prepared and educated workforce. And so we do that as well. We do workforce training. And then support the buy local programs. We absolutely support the buy local programs. In fact, we have Small Business Saturday coming up, next month. We're ordering our supplies for that already. And then proactively use the brownfield incentives to spur high quality redevelopment in mixed use areas. And that one we've been checking the box there too. Finally, the last one for the ongoing is evaluate and implement feasible programs to use IFTs, streamline processing, and other development incentives to encourage energy efficient buildings, designs, and standards, and low impact development techniques. So this one, we don't have much of a hand in that. I know we're listed as the lead in this one. Wondering if maybe this is should be community development or something else, but that is on our ongoing bucket too. So, so since this economic development strategic plan has been put together, we're actively working towards it, but my question to you is, have any goals, internal goals, been changed that we should change any of our focus? Because I want to make sure that we have proper alignment with you guys. I know that was a lot that I just went over too.
Yeah.
Or does anybody have any questions about any of the things we have done, are doing, or will be doing?
Now, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
What I was going to ask is the goals you just went over, these are from a Chamber Economic Development Strategic Plan.
City of Grand Haven. This is from the redevelopment ready communities.
Okay.
The strategic plan was put together, and I do have a copy of it if you'd like.
Okay, I was wondering where you were drawing that from.
Good question.
So what the schools are doing with this Prime program, and then you what did you call it when you went to the grade schools?
Homegrown.
Homegrown.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
going into
so-
elementary students.
So what do you do there? Is it because I hate to have all our local talent fly off to places that sound exotic,
Right.
but aren't nearly as nice as places to live. So
So there's many aspects to that program that are fascinating. So we're going into first through fourth grade, and we're presenting them with a real world problem that maybe a manufacturer is having, or even I think the DDA may even be participating this year if they have an issue to work on. And so those students will use design thinking to just try to solve the problem. Like a presentation that I went to last spring was one manufacturer had scrap of a round piece of metal about this big, and they would scrap it and then send it off to the scrapyard. What could they do with that piece of metal? And so the students, these first graders, were coming in and making a presentation to the parents and to the company of what they could do. And there's a sequence that they go through to get to that. The other part of this is, the parents, when they're coming to see their kids do this performance, sometimes it might be the first time they're walking into a manufacturing facility, and it sometimes changes the image of what manufacturing looks like. It's not always dirty and grungy. It's exciting. There's lots going on, and there's lots of different fields within manufacturing that you can go to. So it's a well-rounded program.
it also, over the weekend I was reading some articles about the impact of China and Mexico draining off so much of our manufacturing base over the last, I would say, what has it been, about 20 years? I just remember Ross Perot saying that giant sucking sound, and people laughed at him, and then actually now we're living that nightmare. And from what I see is that, we're through trade policies and taxing policies, trying to pull some of that back, that we don't want to be a supplier to a couple of other nations around the world and not be able to make anything ourselves. And so is the chamber looking is that, I found that a fascinating concept, that we've become a supplier nation to manufacturers that use very poorly paid or almost slave labor, as opposed to, our highly industrialized and highly, pretty, I would say, highly paid work staff. Probably some of those people would disagree with that description.
I was at a retention visit maybe a month ago with one of our larger manufacturers, and they're a global manufacturer, and talking about their global presence versus their presence in Grand Haven. And one of the comments they made to me was, when we're stronger globally, we're stronger locally. So, sometimes using the world can benefit Grand Haven. Although, tariffs have been a big issue among our manufacturers, and they don't appear to be going away anytime soon. And the exemptions are coming to are winding down fast. So, trying to that's a really big issue that our area manufacturers are working on right now.
I see some of this tariff stuff as short-term pain for long-term gain, because if we just continue to not be able to manufacture anything, practically we have to we send our raw materials and it comes back to us, but we're not in that's all we are, as a global supplier. it seemed like, and that does not provide, good wage jobs. So it was just a fascinating concept, and I didn't know where you guys were on all of that, but I thought it was very interesting reading.
I had a couple comments.
Yeah.
One, on the video.
Yeah.
Or the videos, is there a way that you could email each of us or council, city staff?
Absolutely,
links?
yeah.
I think we can use our social media outlets to plug those.
Yep, we've shared it, we've shared it with, I think with an email blast, but we shared it too in our most recent e-news. But I can if you get e-news, just check that link and it'll be on the very top of the e-news. But I can absolutely share with direct emails to everybody here.
Something we can copy and paste and put into, I'm thinking Facebook or whatever it is we use, would be great. The other thing, because that was funny, by the way, and let you know who that guy was who was doing the acting there. He was great. The other one, on the evaluate and implement, if feasible, community bicycle sharing program. Just curious as to where you are in that and what that might look like.
We haven't done any progress with that, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to come to you guys tonight is check in. Is that, when this was made a little over a year ago, is this still relevant? And sometimes it's okay to change your plan if it's not relevant anymore. So.
Okay. I'm not sure I could speak to the relevance. I do know there are a lot of folks who like to bicycle and want to bicycle, and it's part of Green Grand Haven to be focused on that. The last page, and I think this is in particular with the engagement with our youth. The one thing I didn't see on here, and maybe it's here and I'm not seeing it well, but the talking to our youth about trades and the need for tradespersons. The general contractor, I know that there's a shortage right now. I know Mike can speak to that in his trade. And I think in particular, something I was very impressed with, my nephews, niece and nephews go to Zeeland Public Schools.
Okay.
And the oldest one, Connor's in 9th grade. We were visiting there for a birthday party last week, and he walked in with this really cool metal thing that he had made, which ended up being like a dustpan, metal dustpan that he did some TIG welding on and everything else. And I thought, wow, you're in 9th grade and you're learning how to TIG weld. I don't even know I don't have a clue how to do that. Mike probably, I don't even know what TIG weld is, but I know I was impressed. And here he is in 9th grade, and they've got some sort of an active trades program going on, right down the street in Zeeland. And maybe we have that going on already, but just more publicity about that so kids know, hey, there's other options here locally in the U.S. and in Michigan.
There is a program where they're connecting down near Holland, but it's very limited. We have limited space, and so that's definitely a valid point. And I took a note for that. That's the stuff I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That's build on that. I've heard that a lot of those through the ISD. That there's very, very limited class space out there.
Yeah.
And if this is a crying need, how do we impact that? That there's so many people that apply, but there's 20 people that apply, but we only have room for 5 and only so many from each school. It just seems like not very visionary.
Agreed. Some of our area manufacturers are taking it into their own hands and going directly to the schools and trying to start do an apprenticeship program or begin that. But there's a gap between the school and the companies trying to find those students. How can we identify what students those are within the high school? And so we know that's a gap. It's on our radar, but.
To be students that don't want to go deep in debt and then can't find a job afterwards, that shouldn't be too hard to find, I would think.
What I found out is that during the vocational part, going out to the ISD, out to the vocational center, is that it takes them about an hour to get there, an hour to get back, and the kids are so demanding on how many credit hours they have to graduate, so it's very difficult for them to get out there. There are openings out there for them, but the thing is, for them to take that much time, they're eating up their time space.
Yeah.
And this is what I've heard, because my brother's on the advisory board for the auto body out there, auto body repair. And it's hard to get kids to come out there because of that fact. We have to learn to give them a chance. I'm trying to say is that because if they want to go into a trade, they want to graduate also, but they don't have the chance to do both because it takes too much of their time to go there. When I was growing up, we had all the techs in school. I mean, I made wooden bowls, I learned how to run a lathe, I did welding, you name it, we had everything in school. And they thought it'd be smarter to move them out into one area and incorporate that into it and send them out there. But then all of a sudden they demanded more hours for graduation, then that's when the kids started dropping off, so. That's what we had.
Just to continue that discussion here, because it seems to be a theme of great interest to us. When I was at Howmet, we had apprenticeship programs for our skilled trades, and we recruited from within our company. We had basically adults trying to teach them the trades. And we worked with Muskegon Community College, we worked with other industries, and we basically set up programs where they could get class time as adults. I mean, trying to work through the high school and even lower grades to expose kids to that is great, but that's more like planting a seed as far as actually teaching the skills, having the time and satisfy the curriculum requirements. That's really uphill battle. I would think that our time would be better spent trying to work with our area industries or even on a broader, more regional basis to establish some kind of a skilled trades facility and get some real instruction going so that these kids, when they're done with high school and wondering what to do with themselves, that there's a ready source of training that could benefit our manufacturers.
Yeah, there is the Stura Center up in Muskegon, a part of MCC, that does a lot of that skilled trade training.
And that's what we utilize too, and it's certainly in the area, and maybe there's something there that we could piggyback on or directly utilize or something we could copy and steal, whatever it takes. But I think that it's a genuine need and it's going to fill a need because a lot of the kids that I've worked with, they really learn with their hands and they enjoy working like that.
Oh yeah.
There's a good living to be made at that, and it's a vital need for manufacturing. I mean, it's really a very traditional part of kids' education and the economy as a whole. So if we can do that, not necessarily through the school system per se, but kind of in parallel and beyond and behind that, so that people have these opportunities. That might be something that could be, maybe the chamber could facilitate or at least have discussions and find out what's available, what the status is, and how to bring it home.
Absolutely, I will bring it up to my team for sure. It's a good conversation.
And what you're discussing really dovetails well with several of these goals that we just reviewed. So I think it's just sort of affirming what you presented tonight, but then maybe trying to be a little more specific about skilled trades. That's what we're talking about when we talk about some of these areas of establish state-of-the-art higher education and retraining facilities in the community, focus on increasing brain power, job creation, and retention. Are we talking about skilled trades when we say that?
That could be fairly broad, but skilled trades is certainly a chunk of it.
And then strengthen collaboration between area schools and local business community. Develop curriculum with local schools and universities for students to learn about careers in manufacturing and agriculture. I think those all align pretty well with what's talked about here.
Absolutely.
All righty,
So I got enough to do?
thank you.
There might be some job security in there.
All right.
Some of this might engage Lansing to take a different look at the education system, how many hours that are needed for to be smart, or whatever. Thank you much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, it is 7:28 according to so we got 2 minutes before we start our council meeting.
Adjourn the work session, Jerry?
Oh, yeah, I guess I could officially adjourn the work session.
Thanks.
So that we wait for 2 minutes, now 1 minute and 30 seconds to start our council meeting. right, I call to order this Grand Haven City Council meeting. It is Monday, October 21st, 2019. Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Manetza?
Here.
Bruger? Here. Scott?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
McCaleb?
Here. Our invocation this evening will be given by Pastor Kurt Wenzelberger, St. John's Lutheran Church. Please remain standing after the prayer for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I have to appreciate the fact that you say my name correctly every time.
All right.
So, thank you. And on behalf of St. John's Lutheran Church and School, we want to thank you for everything you guys do. We really do appreciate you, and we appreciate being a part of this great community of Grand Haven. So let's pray. Gracious God, Heavenly Father, we do thank you for all things, as you are the giver of all good gifts. And Lord, you have given us a great gift just in Grand Haven itself. But as we go through this meeting this evening, I ask that you would give all those in the positions of leadership the guidance and the wisdom that can only come from you, that all discussion would be pleasing in your sight, and that we would be a community that really does continue to live up to its name. That we are a Grand Haven. And Lord, it is a place, again, that you've given us. So, again, Lord, we ask that you would lead us in everything that we say and do this evening, that it would all be to your glory. And we pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. God's blessings to you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty, we have several appointments to boards and commissions this evening. So Linda, you want to read, I don't know if you want to put those all together?
Yeah, I'll put them all together.
All right.
It's easier to do that way. This is to appoint Jim Bonamy to the EDC BRA with a term ending March 31st, 2023. Aaron Van Ball to the Duncan Park Commission with a term ending June 30th, 2020. David Hudson to the Construction Board of Appeals with a term ending December 31st, 2020. Amy Bessinger to the Building Authority with a term ending June 30th, 2020, and also to the EDC BRA with a term ending March 31st, 2022.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments or questions on any of these appointees? If not, we will be ready to vote.
Manetza?
Yes.
Bruger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
McCaleb?
Yes. Well, some of these will be strangers and some will be new faces. I think there's some of these folks we know.
I don't know, it's Jim Bonamy.
Jim Bonamy guy, I don't know.
Raise my right hand.
Yep, can you say I do want to know? I, Jim Bonamy, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the EDC BRA in and for the City of Grand Haven, County of Ottawa, and State of Michigan according to the best of my ability.
I do.
Private citizen Bonamy?
Yeah, Citizen Bonamy, yeah, that's kind of a nice sidelight here.
Aaron here? I figured that might be you, because I didn't recognize your face. So I'll just read the oath and you say I do and I'm done.
Okay.
Raise your right hand. I, Aaron Van Ball, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Duncan Park Commission in and for the City of Grand Haven, County of Ottawa, and State of Michigan according to the best of my ability.
I do.
Okay, and then
Yeah, thank you.
And is Dave here yet? Oh, yeah, there you are. I didn't recognize you with your hat on. I, David Hudson, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Construction Board of Appeals in and for the City of Grand Haven, County of Ottawa, and State of Michigan according to the best of my ability.
I do.
Okay. And then sign right there.
And we're gonna put you right to work. Thanks.
All set.
We're gonna do Amy?
Don't need to. Oh, we didn't.
She's here.
She's on
I
the
know
clock
she's here.
tomorrow, we'll get her.
I can swear at her tomorrow if you want, so.
Alrighty, yeah, we don't wanna, you know, since, Jim was our finance director, we don't wanna waste all his familiarity and knowledge of the, goings-on, so, when he volunteered to, be appointed to this board as a citizen, I thought it was very good. And then, Amy as our new finance director, so, awesome. On to the approval of the consent and regular agendas.
I have no changes, Your Honor.
Nothing up here? Okay, then I need a motion to accept the agendas as submitted.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. And if there aren't any questions, we will vote.
Bruger,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes.
McCaleb.
Yes. General business, call the audience. This is one of two opportunities for anyone to address council on anything that they have on their mind. Just let us know who you are and where you live.
Jeremy Swiftney with Grand Haven Main Street. We just wanted to take a moment from Grand Haven Main Street and from the Art Walk Committee to thank City Council and Mayor McCaleb for the continued support this year with the 10th year of Art Walk, and we look hopeful to another year next year.
All right, thank you. Oh, that's very cool. All righty. Thank you, Jeremy. And thanks to the DDA and the Art Walk Committee for always bringing a lot of interesting stuff to downtown. And a lot of vitality, a lot of interest on the streets, and always a good time. So thanks very much. Anyone else want to address council at this time? If not, we will move on to our consent agenda. Linda, if you want to read those items.
This is to approve the special, closed, and regular council meeting minutes of October 7th, 2019. Approve the bills memo in the amount of $760,845.24, and to permit WAWL Community Radio to produce and present local origination programming on the 3 city public, educational, and government access channels on the Spectrum Charter Cable Television System, and authorize the mayor to sign the letter of agreement.
All right. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Moved and seconded. Comments or questions on any of the items on the consent agenda? I don't know about that number 3. Only kidding.
Fill the airways.
That's right. If none, we will vote.
Scott,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes.
Bruger,
Yes.
McCaleb.
Yes. All right, first item in new business.
First item is to affirm the content. I can't talk. Let me start over again.
Must be the rain.
To affirm the content of a proposed resolution for consideration by the Grand Haven Board of Light and Power.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Moved and seconded. All right. Pat, you want to kind of tell us how we got to this point with this resolution?
Well, my understanding is that the BLP board is considering a resolution to set up the platform for which information would be shared between the two boards, and there's an initial proposed form sent over to City Council that you looked at your last meeting and decided that in between meetings, maybe you'd collectively or individually make some comments or recommendations. So I did get some feedback from a couple council members, made some adjustments, and what you see before you tonight is a result of that. So whatever you do, this is really a resolution that may be considered by the Board of Light and Power. This is just your opportunity, I guess, to review what's here and pass your feelings about this back over to the Board of Light and Power.
Okay. There's a few things about this, the way it has come about. You know, the first one I saw was quite long, and then when we pared it down and took out, actually Bob did most of the writing on getting dust down to the essentials, but there are still some, to me, there are still some questions about this, including, in my estimation, point number 6, I think is kind of, you know, I'm going to go back to when we originally passed this resolution that the Board of Light and Power, because of the, it's second behind the City Council in responsibility according to the charter, but we went so far as to say that we needed to see every contract, and because, you know, that the Board of Light and Power, you know, enters into. At the time, I thought that was a good idea. In retrospect, I think I was wrong, and I'm thinking that we need to look at the way that we relate, because for many years we got along quite well, not asking this of the Board of Light and Power, and when we tried to implement this, it's kind of going to, you know, whose responsibility is what, and so I'm thinking that, you know, we've got along very well with both of our boards in the directions that they've gone by them making the decisions for the Board of Light and Power, and even though the City Council has the ultimate responsibility for these workings, that they have a board, an elected board of their own that would make these decisions. And as long as we share information and understand where each one stands and what each one is doing, it's good for all of us, to everybody, to have a trust relationship with one another. And so some of these, like, you know, so, you know, I'm not sure that saying to the, like, especially in point number 6, that says that, you know, all purchases other than power purchases need to be presented to the approval of City Council in order for the contract to have force and effect. With all the things that the Board of Light and Power does, I'm not sure that that is a good, you know, a good arrangement, because that's that point, that as long as we are being reported to, which is in point 3, that there will be reports on a quarterly basis, that we know, so that we have a, you know, a better understanding of what each board is doing, that those kind of things would be covered at that point. So I am in favor of having this understanding and having, you know, more, you know, it's like sending, so having somebody from City Council make sure that they volunteer to go to the BLP meeting so that they know exactly what the board is taking care of. But to have each contract submitted, I think for my own part, even though I voted in favor of it at the time, I don't think it was, you know, I don't think that that's necessary. So I'm in favor of this resolution minus point number 6. And I think that would be, I think that we could go forward well with that, so. That's my views on this resolution as it stands.
Well, I did some of the wordsmithing here after the last one too, and I tried to make it simple, and I didn't really judge content a lot. Like I said at our last meeting, I'm disappointed that we need a formal resolution so that we can have information sharing conversation. Seems like that's something we should be able to just do. But if it clears the air and helps people understand what's expected, then okay. I agree about the point number 6. The version I saw previously didn't have that. Any purchase other than power purchases, 5 years in duration or $100,000, that's for the scale of things they do at BLP, that's pretty fine. It's pretty fine supervision, and it's something that we don't really need to be much involved in. So I would agree that if we're going to do this, that I would drop line 6. I don't know about the 5 years in duration on purchase power contracts. I know that there is some term. I don't know if it's 5 years or some other number. Probably whatever is consistent with charter provisions or good practice. And I'm okay with having a formal recognition that we need to approve long-term contracts such as the long power purchases. The rest of this resolution is basically saying we're going to talk to each other on a regular basis, things that we have done in the past and things that we probably could do, whether we said we were going to or not. But like I say, I'm okay with having a formal resolution if that clears the air. But I would agree with Jerry that I'd drop line 6.
Any other comments?
Well, I would drop line 6 as well. Number 5, I believe previously, was it 10 years? On any contract in duration longer than 10 years, it would have to come before city council, or is that, am I not?
The reason for point number 5 is, from my understanding, is that, and Jerry Witherall is here as a member of the board, he can correct me if I misstate the understanding, is that power purchases of a 5-year duration are pretty much established by the MPPA. There is not a whole lot of variance in cost on those, and so it's not, there's pretty much set and standard. So it's when you go into the 10 to 15-year commitments, particularly in either gas or in renewable energy, those are the kind of things that would come to council. And we didn't put a number by it because they are large numbers that we don't have any idea of until we face that. And then that's even kind of in the, I hate to say speculation, but it's kind of a hedge area where it's a complicated, it's the way the power utilities have to purchase, and whether it's like a, maybe Jerry can explain that better than I can, is that you're buying an opportunity to secure power, but you don't ever actually use that block of power that you buy. When it comes to the actual usage, it comes to you in a different form, but but this is like you're buying a block of power into the future. Jerry's nodding his head that I've said this in the correct manner.
I think then, under the understanding that this is a dialogue more than something we're dictating to them, they're going to review and present alternative viewpoints, then I'm not opposed to keeping number 5 in there as written. The point number 4, a little bit of hesitation on that one, and I guess it'd be seeking clarification. As far as internal BLP materials that contain a reference current BLP administrative policies and practices, I think the one interpretation of the charter is that we were to give general direction to the Board of Light and Power, and I guess then the linchpin is what general means. And when I get into specific purchasing powers of the administration, I feel like we're overstepping our general directive a little bit. So I guess I'd like a little more clarification on that before I vote for it. I think in big picture, we from council should be talking in big picture, and that seems to get down to the minutia a little bit. So I'm interested in what the take is on that one from whoever else was involved in this. Is anybody?
I too think number 6 should be omitted from this. And I'm okay with leaving 5 in there as it is, and 4 also. But anyways, I think it's going to go back to the Board of Light and Power for their review, and they can go ahead and amend it as they see fit and bring it back to us. And so I don't have a problem with any of it through 5, but I think it'd be the right thing to do with them at 6. I agree.
Very good. I'm happy with it. You can take 6 out. It doesn't make any difference to me. All I would like to see, as I said from the very beginning, is just I'd like to have more information coming from them to us. As I told their man in charge, is I don't mind reading. Send me everything you got. I like reading and seeing what's going on. So if this is a start. It's very good. I don't have a problem. I never really had a problem with the Board of Light and Power. We just had a few differences on things, but I think we worked out a lot of those over the past few months, and I think this is a good way for us to start out again. I just like to see more information. That's all I'd like to see. I like to see the same packet that he sends out to his board members. I just like to see the same packet as we do with ours. People at home can come online and see the same thing that we have here. You can go and see all the information that we have. And being a public utility, being open in that's all I ever wanted, was just to be open and making sure that everybody in the community knows exactly what's going on with the Board of Light and Power and City Council. We should be more receptive to that. People should have an understanding of how it works and all that. So if this gets us back together, I'm pleased. I'm going to vote yes on this. If you want to take the 6 out, that's fine.
Okay, do we need to amend this to strike number 6?
I think if the motion were to affirm the resolution as presented without number 6.
Okay.
And again, that simply is a communication back to the BLP, and like Denny said, they'll pass what they pass, and I'm sure you'll be very happy with it.
I would make a comment. The concern about line 4, that language was a part of Pat's original draft, and I didn't really see an issue in the sense that it says that BLP will provide documentation as requested of basically internal materials related to policies and practices. It doesn't make any of it actionable. It says that if we want information, that we should be able to ask for it and get it. Now, there may or may not be materials there which would be publicly released, but it could be something we'd be interested in knowing. And if there's too much information, I've gotten pretty good at picking through the stuff that I really need to know and not paying a lot of attention to the stuff that has nothing to do with me. So I think we're all in that boat. We get a pretty large volume of information through our packets and everything else we're asked to do. But that's an as request when there's a concern. And I didn't really see a reason why we couldn't ask for that. And there again, I think that this entire resolution is all about things that we were able to do informally in the past. So to the extent that this clears the air, makes it specific what we're agreeing to and the roles we're going to play, fine. If you need an amendment to remove line 6, I can offer that. If you don't care, since all we're doing is affirming language to be passed along to BLP.
That is true, and I just want to be clear that none of this is anything that I drafted or wrote or proposed. I was just passing it on to you from...
Well, we saw it originally in that form, and then we massaged it, and now here it is.
Yeah, so I think this has been, a good number of authors have been involved in this. I don't think anybody's going to claim ownership at this point.
Oh, God, no.
But it will go back to the BLP, and they'll maybe put a finishing touch on it and send it back. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it's just a nice, friendly effort between the two boards to articulate what the mutual expectations are.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, I think the most valuable part of this is point number 3, that there will be quarterly reports, especially as Sims, after June of 2020, when it will be closed down, or whenever the coal runs out, that there will be communication between the two boards as far as what's happening with Sims, as far as it's taking down, and then the rebuild of another gas fired plant on the Harbor Island location. So we will be apprised of all the decisions, all the details, and hopefully provide some input if asked along the way. So I think that is so that we're all on the same page and keep each other informed. I think is probably the most important thing that we can do for each other as we move forward. So appreciate this very much.
And with number 6 being removed and the understanding that it's a conversation, and out of respect to the BLP, which is another elected body and not an appointed body, I recognize that you need to have and have earned by way of being elected a certain level of trust and respect, mutual respect and understanding. And I think that our charter lends itself to that with broad objectives that are dictated by council. So as long as this is a part of a a conversation, and with that understanding coming from me, then I'll be able to vote in favor of this with the removal of number 6. Should I make a motion to remove
We need to
number
make a
6?
motion.
No, I put it in the wording.
Oh, you already did, all
Yeah.
right, okay.
We don't
So
need to.
what this resolution is going to say is to affirm the content of a proposed resolution for consideration with the removal of number 6 by the Grand Haven Board of Light and Power. And then when I put it in the minutes, I'll show this original one with number 6 black lined out.
All right,
Okay.
sounds good.
Sounds fair.
All right. All right, so I think we're ready to vote.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
Ruger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
McCaleb?
Yes. All right, next item.
Next item is to waive payment of an invoice dated June 6, 2019, in the amount of $41,994.72 for services related to care and maintenance of Duncan Park between July 1st, 2015 and May 31st, 2019, and to fund the care and maintenance of Duncan Park as determined by the Duncan Park Commission in an amount not to exceed $10,000 for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020.
All right, is there a motion
So
for this
moved.
item?
Support.
Is there okay, moved and seconded. Pat, do you want to give us a brief explanation? And then Roger Cotner, the head of the Duncan Park Commission, is here to
Sure, back in 2015 thereabouts, it's the Duncan Park Commission had been reformed following a long run of a Duncan Park Commission that was made up of 3 individuals, and you're all very familiar with the process we went through at the Circuit Court to get the trusteeship revised. A new 5-member body was appointed, a new city ordinance was adopted, and at that time, the commission and the city agreed that the city DPW would take up care and maintenance of the park and run a tab over the years as we waited for some litigation that was pending. We thought we would wait until that ran its course, and also the transition from the old to the new commission would be more complete and things would clear up a little bit. So earlier this year, or late last year, we sent them an invoice and have gone through some discussions back and forth and ultimately issued an invoice to Duncan Park Commission for those services over that period of time. And the Duncan Park chairman sent a letter to the mayor asking that those fees be waived and that the city appropriate $10,000 this year for the care and maintenance of the park. And the point that I've made is that the Community Foundation holds a fund for Duncan Park for the care and maintenance of Duncan Park that has ample resources to cover this bill and the costs of overseeing, caring for that park. So that's what is being asked of you, and what your administration is telling you is that it's a legitimate invoice that was agreed on by both sides prior to us incurring those costs, and you have spent those dollars over the last 4 years. I mean, those are dollars that are gone and have been paid to city staff and equipment and supplies to take care of the park. So this isn't, we're not asking them for something that's a windfall by any means. These are dollars that have been spent by the taxpayers over the last 4 years, and we're just looking to be reimbursed as agreed 4 years ago.
Okay. Hey, Roger.
Appreciate the opportunity to address this question, Mayor McCaleb and members of council. My name is Roger Cotner. I'm president of the Duncan Park Commission. And I speak for the commission, not for Roger Cotner. These motions have been approved specifically to ask the city council to waive the $42,000 invoice and to ask for funds to care for the park. As you know, Martha Duncan gave approximately 40 acres of woodland to the people of the city of Grand Haven 106 years ago, almost to the day. It was on October 22nd, 1913. The gift had certain conditions, and in no particular order in the deed of trust, the gift required city council to accept the gift with its conditions and to bind itself and future councils, including this council, to fulfill those conditions. City Council had to pass an ordinance establishing the Duncan Park Commission. The gift must be known as Duncan Park and be held as a public park for the citizens of Grand Haven. And City Council shall provide the means for the care and improvement of the park. These are conditions in the deed of trust. I'm here tonight to ask Council to meet one of the conditions of Mrs. Duncan's gift, specifically provide our commission with the means to care and improve the park. As indicated in my letter to Mayor McCaleb, the commission received an invoice of about $42,000 for services provided by the city in Duncan Park over a 4.5-year period, specifically from July 1, 2015 through May 31 this year, 2019. I would like to correct a couple items in Mr. McGinnis's memo and in his presentation tonight. Specifically, we were appointed as a commission in 2013, not in 2015. So we were on the job for about 2 years prior to the foundation's choosing to suspend our funding. I don't know exactly what all the reasons were as far as that suspension of funding, but the city stepped up and agreed to continue to provide services to the park. We understood that the city was keeping a tab, but we understood that that tab would either be presented later or it would be waived by this council. Contrary to Mr. McGinnis's memo, this had nothing to do with the old commission versus the new commission. As I said, the new commission had been in place for over 2 years when this began. Given the condition of the gift, the commission respectfully asks the council to fulfill its care and maintenance obligation to the park. The commission asks the council to waive the invoice and to provide us with $10,000 in funding for the current fiscal year. I'd be happy to address further questions if council has any.
I've been here all my life, and the Duncan Park is true in the city of Grand Haven, but it's the Duncan Park. It's not really a city park as compared to our other parks. Under the auspices of all the other commissioners that were on there, they have a large amount of funds to maintain, and they did maintain. Before your commission, they hired personnel to maintain that property, and they paid out of their own pocket what they had, out of their own funds that they had available to them. It was never brought to attention for us to do that in the city of Grand Haven, to expect to be paying when you have a large sum of money to maintain. That's what that money is for. It's in the community funds to maintain that park. It was not for us to maintain, it was for that commission to maintain. And then when we appointed you, we had a lawsuit at the time. We have expended over $120,000, which come out of the general fund of ours, and plus our insurance company has to help defend that. And all the large money, if I remember correctly, I think you have close to $500,000 in your account sitting there to help maintain Duncan Park. So we are at an end here. I'm not in favor of waiving anything. I think we should go back to the same way it's always been, is that you have the money to maintain it, and that's what it's for. That's what it's in the fund for to maintain that park. If we just set up a fund for legal funds, because it is draining us. It's $120,000. If we can use that money for infrastructure instead of paying lawyer fees out, it'd be totally different. It would be nice if the Duncan Park Commission would help in with our fund. show them that they are very concerned about their park and maintain it as a park for City of Grand Haven and their constituents. And I'll leave the rest of it up for anybody else that wants to add. I can come back.
Well, question from me, what, between 1913 and roughly 2013 or 2015, who paid for the services that the city provided?
I don't know the
Or
answer to
you
that
know,
question,
yeah.
Mr. Bruger. What I do know is that when I came on board in 2013, there was a substantial amount of money being held at the Community Foundation according to an agreement between the commission, consisting of Ed Lystra, Rodney Griswold, and Jerry Scott, and the Community Foundation. And I believe that the reason that fund was established was because councils in prior years had not funded the commission's activities. So I can remember attending a fundraiser at Paul Johnson's shortly after we moved into our place on Woodlawn in 1992. And Paul Johnson pressed the flesh and made the case for us to contribute some money to, I believe, what became the Duncan Park Fund at the Community Foundation. So the monies in the Community Foundation were raised generally by Paul Johnson and others to try to maintain the park the best they could, because for whatever reason, council had not approved operating funds to take care of the park.
So, what then is the fund used for?
We used the fund between 2013 and 2015 for general operations in the park. You may remember we had an independent contractor, Bob DeHare. He was in the park almost every day. He took care of the park. He took great pride in the park. And in, I believe it was in 2014, we terminated that relationship and the city took over services. We paid the city from the fund with appropriations approved by our commission until the fund ran dry, so to speak, in 2015.
I have to think some more. I'll turn it over to anybody else up here for the moment. Thanks for the time.
All right, and I will, there's 2 or 3 things here that I find troubling, and not sure I know the answers either, but I'll bring them up. One is that I think it's very unfortunate that we're somehow conflating the legal fees and problems from the lawsuits with the maintenance, operation, and care issue, because they're totally different issues. And so where we have been talking about $120,000 legal expenses to try to keep another party from suing the park out from under us, that's not what we're talking about here. So that just needs to be separated and not put together. I think that I'm also confused by why there's a fund in the community center if it's not intended to be used for this. As I read the deed and trust from Martha Duncan, it talks about common council or municipal body of the city of Grand Haven shall provide means for the care and improvement of said park. By itself, that seems like a really simple, straightforward statement. Goes on to talk about the desire and intention of the grantor. Natural beauty of the forest within the park should be preserved. That it talks about all the standing timber being left, that the improvements consist of putting in roads and paths, that the trustees, but it shall be the right and duty of said trustees to remove all dead, dying, unsightly trees, to thin out undergrowth wherever necessary, to remove dead branches, noxious weeds, and other rubbish, keep the park in as neat and trim a condition as the means at their command will allow. So apparently there was some thought that there was other means besides the city's means that the trustees were to tap on to do certain duties. So I don't think it's real clear cut, and I think it's slightly out of context. But as a public park, there certainly has to be responsibility to maintain the park. So I'm thinking that this isn't quite as simple as has been presented. I wish I knew a better answer because this is not something I'm real qualified to speak to other than I can read. And I can read what's here. And it looks to me like it's it goes on to say that Martha Duncan can remove up to 30 running cords of wood each year for firewood for her personal use at her own expense. So, I mean, the language in here, I think, was written with something fairly specific in mind, that here was a forest, that certain paths and trails could be cut through it, that the trustees would keep it cleaned up, and that Martha Duncan would get some utility out of it. And then from there, 106 years later, we are talking about the city is supposed to, your expectation is the city is supposed to fund everything. I don't think that, one thing that all of this, both our ordinance and the original deed of trust, is really clear that the Duncan Park Commission is in charge of the park, that you make the rules of the park, that you make the decisions about the park, that everything that's lawfully yours to do with regard to taking care of the park is yours to decide. But you also are saying that there has to be a block of money which the city should award, that the city wouldn't have any decision-making power in, at least not council, that we would simply would be yours to use with as you see fit. I think that's a little unusual for how we do things around here. So I think that there's something that needs to be cleaned up in that attitude, that, or not attitude, in that approach, that you get to make all the decisions, we provide the money, we don't get to say anything about it, and that's really unusual for the way we generally do business. So my rather fumbled reading of this ancient deed is that there's more to it than just we need to provide the means, as you might demand or expect, to pay all the bills. And there is this fund which is established for some reason, apparently to get you through those times when we didn't understand each other. So, left at that, I'm not inclined to vote yes on this particular waiver, although I think there probably could be something that could be worked out to come to an understanding as to what the responsibilities really are, what say the council would have, and how the city's money is spent, with due respect to the responsibilities of the Duncan Park Commission. So, personally, I don't think this is really ripe for us to make a decision on. I don't know. I asked Mr. McGinnis if he'd heard anything from the city's attorney, if there was any reason to even discuss it with our attorney. I don't know if that happened or not. But based on my limited understanding of what's going on and what this could imply for going forward, I'd rather that this had had some more thorough discussion and clearing of the air before we had to vote on it. So I'm not likely to vote yes on this unless somebody can really clear things up well for me. So I'll leave it at that for now.
I'd be happy to take a stab at it if you'd like, Mr. Manetza.
I would love that.
You mentioned that the trustees may have had some means at their disposal when Mrs. Duncan wrote this deed of trust. And to my knowledge, I don't know if that's true or not. As I understand it from prior trustees of this trust, for whatever reason, the city was not providing operating funds to the commission to take care of things in the park. So they took it upon themselves to go out and raise money. I don't know exactly where all the money came from. I know it has grown as a result of a rising stock market that seems to be taking most ships up in a rising tide. But I do know that there were funds that were contributed by individual donors like myself, and I can assure you there weren't too many zeros on my gift. I thoroughly love the park and enjoy serving for the park, but from my perspective as a citizen, it would appear to me that the city should take responsibility for helping fund the operations of the park. I know that's not popular everywhere, but it is a city park that the people of the city of Grand Haven use and enjoy. I do know that there are contributions every year to the Community Foundation's Duncan Park Fund, often from estates, and they're not terribly large. At the risk of characterizing them as not terribly large, they're in the $1,000 to $5,000 range. And it's just their way of leaving a bit of a legacy to something that enhanced their lives while they resided in the city of Grand Haven. I think if you read into the deed a little bit further, you'll see that there are some taxes being waived for Mrs. Duncan. And of course, she gets firewood, but Mrs. Duncan isn't around anymore, and I think that property, I think it was on Lake Avenue, is likely on the tax rolls these days.
Well, there were 2 pieces of land that were part of the Duncan Woods, and the second one was in 1918, and that may be the other piece where she lived. I'm not sure about that, and I don't think anybody's drawing firewood anymore, so I get that. That's obsolete. And the tax improvements you're talking about were anything on Lake Avenue was not to be assessed against this, which makes sense if it's a public park.
And one of the things that we used the fund for, we passed a motion to contract with Drew Rayner with the Ottawa Conservation District to treat the hemlock trees in the park. You may have noticed that there are tags on every hemlock tree in that park. Also, not nearly as visible as the tags, is the treatment that he and his crew put on those trees. I understood that the city was going to endeavor to do this in various parks, including the cemetery, Mulligan's Hollow, and I thought Duncan Park, but things weren't moving very fast, and we were getting infected trees in the park. So we took action and authorized Ottawa Conservation District to treat the hemlocks for the hemlock woolly adelgid at a cost not to exceed $18,000. They came in at $16,500, and we authorized disbursement of that money from the fund to the city to pay the invoice. So from my perspective of that fund, it's not really so much for the day-to-day operations, but rather for the big projects. You may remember a number of years ago we had a big blowdown, and we contracted with RV Tree to come in and take the trees down because they were dangerous. They were hanging. They were a threat to our community. And we spent, I believe it was about $2,000 to have that done. A few years later, we had another blowdown. I believe the BLP came in and helped with that project a bit. I don't know exactly what the tab on that was, but I see that fund for bigger projects that council may not deem important or pressing, like the hemlock woolly adelgid issue that we dealt with earlier this year. I also, there are certain partnerships between public and private that are good. There are also some partnerships that the public would prefer that someone else pay for if they can get the enjoyment and use out of the park, if you will. And I get that. I understand that, especially in these times of tight budgets. But I truly believe that the city should pay for the day-to-day operations of the park, picking up trash, mowing the lawn, just the basics. And I think if you average out the $42,000 invoice over 4.5 years, you'll see that averages to about $10,000 a year. Maybe a little bit less, but that's where we came up with the $10,000 number.
Your Honor?
So, yes.
I just wanted to make a couple points to clarify my position on a few of these items. The woolly adelgid story there, we did receive the intelligence from GVSU and the Ottawa County Conservation District that we had infections in Duncan Woods, in Mulligan's Hollow, and the cemetery. The adelgids don't know that these are different areas. They're in the trees in all of those areas. And the city council more or less immediately appropriated up to $20,000 to take care of that, which was communicated to Drew Rayner and the Conservation District, as well as the professor at GVSU, whose name's escaping me right now.
Ali Locker.
Yeah, Dr. Locker. And then the Community Foundation came up with a grant to help us out to make up the difference that we thought it was going to be from all this treatment of about $13,000. And the Community Foundation from other funds came on board and agreed to that. So the decision by the Conservation District to do Duncan first was a scheduling issue. We weren't dragging our feet. We let them know right away that we had funds available to do the control that they were proposing. The idea that the fund is there for larger purchases, I mean, the fund itself, and I'd be happy to provide you with a copy, the use of the fund, the purpose and use of the Duncan Park Fund shall be to provide funds for the maintenance and operation of Duncan Park. It's a very simple one-line purpose for that fund. With the north of $500,000, the 4% that is the standard used by the Community Foundation to make funds available would spin off just over $21,000 a year for the maintenance and operation of Duncan Park. And as Mr. Cotner just expressed, it's about $10,000 a year to maintain and operate that park. So the fund that was set up to maintain and operate the park specifically is what the fund was set up for in 1994, is when that fund was first established at the Community Foundation, is generating enough income now, more than twice what it costs to operate and maintain that park. Historically, just over the last 16 years, and including the current iteration, that's the beauty of this mechanism, is that it's a beautiful park open to the public that doesn't cost the public any money. That's, I believe, why the donors were asked to contribute, that there would be no burden on the taxpayer. This would be an open public park for the use of the public, but would not cost the public money if they came up with their own funding source, again, for the maintenance and operation of Duncan Park. That's directly out of the fund agreement. That's what that money is for. And that's what we're proposing be used to pay for the maintenance and operation of the park. At no time was there any formal discussion about waiving these fees. We had staff at every Duncan Park meeting, and we did not talk about the possibility of waiving these fees. In fact, quite the opposite. We reported on how much money was being spent and where we were at. Each time we would attend those meetings, we had that information available. So, I don't think there was ever any intention. I don't know if you remember talking at this board about waiving those charges. The idea was that we would run a tab and then be made whole. And when we went to ask to be made whole, there was a lot of decision and indecision back and forth. We were told we were approved, and then we weren't approved, so we sent the money back and said, here's the invoice. Now, going forward, I'm perfectly happy backing off and no longer providing services there. And the Duncan Park Commission can contract with any number of landscape companies, but the reason that fund was established was to pay for the operation and maintenance of that park. And that's what it's been doing for years. I mean, up until when we started doing the operation and maintenance, we weren't spending anything. It was 100% funded. We didn't have a line item in the city budget. We didn't send money down there. We would frequently go in and take care of things as a cooperative venture. If there were logs to be moved or things needed to be done, there were frequently times the DPW would be in there. We plowed snow for many years. So, it is a park open to the public, but there is a mechanism in place to pay for the costs. Generates more than double what it takes to run the place, and I don't know what other purpose other than the maintenance and operation of Duncan Park could be taken out of the context of the fund agreement that's at the Community Foundation.
I'll just quote from the agreement with the Community Foundation. It's 4.01, use of fund. The purpose and use of the Duncan Park Fund shall be to provide funds for the maintenance and operation of Duncan Park. It doesn't say that that's the sole source. It doesn't say anything other than the fact that this is what this fund is for. And there's various mechanisms in the agreement and as to how the funds will be dispersed and to whom. I understand Mr. McGinnis's point that, there's money somewhere else. Let's spend somebody else's money before we commit to spending money on our park. And I think that's just not comporting with Mrs. Duncan's deed of trust. I think she said the city shall provide the means for the care and maintenance and operation of the park. It's right there in the deed. And if the city won't live up to that obligation, then so be it. I do think it leaves the city in a somewhat vulnerable spot that they're not providing the means to care for the park.
So why do you suppose a few years ago there was an agreement for us to run a tab and then charge you for it?
There was no formal agreement when the foundation cut off the fund, cut off our access to the fund. The city volunteered to run a tab. And I've spoken with, never was it in a motion, never was it in the minutes that they'll run a tab and they will be repaid back. They just said that we'll run a tab until we get through this, specifically the Nash litigation.
I would imagine running a tab has the implication that we would do something with the tab, such as ask for it.
Or waive it.
This is, yes, a rather interesting dilemma, because it makes me think about questions I hadn't really thought about before. From what I understand, this fund that provides that the Duncan Park has as a community foundation do we have a year when that actually started? Because I understand that not long before that, the Duncan Park Commission had very little money to work with, maybe 20 grand was all that they had, and suddenly through fundraisers it became a much larger amount of money. But then, so my question is, before there was that large amount of money, how did the park run on an annual basis? Did they do all their own fundraisers? Was there a city contribution for the past 100 years, the 80 of the 100 years that we've had the park? I'm not sure how the park was maintained up to then. Was it, if it was volunteers or, it brings to mind that question about, how was it taken care of before there was this money available, and after or before when the budget was or when the amount of money that was on hand was very small. Because I don't know the answer to that.
I've had conversations with Ed Lystra, who was a trustee of the commission prior to the Nash litigation, and Ed was an attorney, and Ed told me that, because I specifically asked him, where'd this money come from? And he told me that, specifically it came from a meager amount that they had on hand when they established the fund. I don't have any reason to doubt Mr. McGinnis's figure of $20,000, but that's not much to take care of a park. The designated fund agreement is dated June 14, 1994. So, to your question, what happened during the 175 years before that? I understood one of the trustees on the commission was Glenn Eaton, and I understood that he was a member of the Board of Light and Power, and I understood that sometimes the Board of Light and Power would do some things in the park. And, I don't know how it happened or why it happened, but I do know that there were those I call them hot dogs across the street from my house.
Absolutely, that's Hot Dog Hill. Everybody knows that.
Those look a lot like utility poles that have been cut down a bit. Aesthetically they're not much, but they
do the job.
Sledders love it when they come back up the hill. But I don't. To address your question, Mayor, I can't really say how they funded their operations prior to '94.
Because the way I've looked at this, and it's kind of interesting set of questions. Well, there's that money sitting there, so what else the purpose for it would be? But it's then you come to what is the city's responsibility and what is the Duncan Park responsibility? And part of my thinking is that is that for, you know, those years in the like mid-90s when the city did not contribute, and it was all out of the Duncan Park's own money that they paid Mr. DeHare for his services, that it gave because Duncan Park was independent, as independent of the regular. It's not part of our regular park system through the trust, and so that level of independence, you know, I think it is an important thing. And it even came about when we redid the trust and reestablished the board with 5 members instead of the original 3, that it's you know, I thought to myself, well, it has this money, and so it's not something that the city then has to support. It's self-supporting, so there's no burden to the city. It is only if this is for protection of the trustees so that they don't get personally sued, as you know, in the original case. But I never really thought about the fact of who paid for this before that time, and so it doesn't seem like a big ask to say, you know, well, you have all this money there, that should go for the maintenance of the park, but it doesn't answer the question, what was past practices. It does seem convenient that money is there, and it should be used for, you know, things like cutting the grass, because there isn't a ton of stuff. It's not like a manicured park. It is supposed to be in its natural state. We just keep, you know, the dangerous trees from falling on people and cutting the grass, and, you know, as much as we can. But it's not like, you know, Bicentennial Park or something like that. So it doesn't get that same amount of maintenance. Although the amount of money spent on mutt mitts seemed a little excessive, but who knows? But so it's kind of a dilemma as to how this should be, and then there's that question about, do we plow to the lift station, or do we plow to the parking lot, and who pays for the city has to plow to the lift station. The parking lot is who pays for that, and should anybody pay for that? Because it's a natural place for the plow to turn around in the parking lot and come back out, rather than doing a 3-point turn at the lift station. So some of this stuff becomes, I think it gets tangled up in, this is the way we did it back at the turn of the century, and budgets today are differently, and we're trying to allocate who pays for what. So, but it does bode some interesting questions as to whose responsibility is what. And I'm wondering if there isn't a better way to do this than to, you know, like on friendly terms, rather than the way we seem to be going about it. So, but I was pretty much determined. I like the independence of paying your own way. I think that you don't have to ask, and you don't, like, if you need something done and somebody doesn't show up, you are responsible to get that party in there to do it. You don't have to wait until the public works guys have some free time that they can come in and take care of that particular thing. So there's a lot to be said for independence, and that was my thought as when we made this arrangement, that money was there for the care of the park. But throwing this, who took care of the park before all this, kind of throws a monkey wrench into that thinking. So I don't have a problem in actually that the commission pays for the $10,000 a year. But I do have a question about the plowing business, because why would anybody plow just to the lift station when they could turn around the parking lot and come back? So what should that actual amount be? I think an approximation of what they used to spend was around $7,000-8,000 a year, coming out of its own fund. And I certainly, you know, like previously said, well, that it should pay its total way, including legal fees, and I don't agree with that, because legal fees can chew that gift up, you know, in a real quick amount. So this doesn't clarify things. I think it complicates things for me. So I'm going to see what Denny has to say.
Okay. I think before the fund was set up, I remember when I worked for the city, and I think Jim Bravelick was the crew leader back then, and I think we went in there and we took care of the trash. I also know that when we had a problem in there, the city crew would go in there. And I worked for the city since I started in '68. my dad in '58, and I know my dad was in that park doing some maintenance too. So there was some maintenance done by the city, there's no doubt about it. As far as the plowing goes, we've always plowed that road. You got a lift station in there, to go to the lift station and try to plow it out, and it doesn't add that much time to it, because if you drive all the way in there and you clean out where, you know, when you first drive in there, all the way back, you clean it out a little bit, you come back, you make a right-hand turn, because your plow's facing the right anyways, and to do a left-hand turn in there from the roadway is crazy, because that's a lot more cleanup. So it's a lot better just go back there, come back, go in the lift station, clean it up a little bit, and then if you're not gonna clean all the way back, then you have to clean that approach out anyways. So that whole big approach has to be cleaned out. It's just as easy to go back and forth a few times, and you know, for charge for plowing, I think is crazy. But and we did do some maintenance work back then. You know, they didn't have the funds. I really didn't realize that that way back then that they had their own funds, which they probably didn't back then. You know, back in '68. So, and we did, like I said, we didn't do a lot of work in there, but we did some work in there once in a while. Things happened down there, and we did it. And I think I seen the Board of Light and Power in there too, you know, and so, but, you know, so I have a problem not paying anything. I know you have a large fund built up right now, and I know it's easy to grab money out of that fund, but to say we don't have responsibility in there, I think is wrong. I think we do have some responsibility in there. So I don't know how much. Maybe we ought to talk about that and negotiate that, I guess, maybe. But I think we have some responsibility to that park. Citizens of Grand Haven love that park, and it'd be a tragedy to spend all that money, you know, and come back and we're broke again, and then we'll be, then for this council to come back and say, look, we're not going to fund anything in that park. I think that's wrong. So. You know, I don't know, willing to go $5,000 a year or something, you know, just to start the fund, do something in that park anyways. But I think it's wrong just for the city to neglect that park. I think that's wrong.
I don't see us as neglecting the park. I do see Mike's point, and I agree to some degree. This is also tied in conjunction with the legal fees. And for the fund to exist to pay for operational and maintenance costs, and when we present a bill for operation and maintenance costs, and that's rejected, and at the same time we're covering legal fees, I get a little bit frustrated. Now, there's a lot of things flying around here with history and what has happened, and I don't think we're in any place to make a vote on this. I'm not tonight. I would like to propose that we remove this, and perhaps the mayor and another representative from council sit down and talk with the Duncan Park Committee or Commission, or some other way that we can sit and talk, because voting on this tonight with so much information flying around is going to be a definite challenge, and I don't want to end up in any more legal challenges when we've got interpretations at play here. So I'd like to postpone this. I don't know how long. I'm open to suggestions on that. If somebody else wants to vote on this, we can try to push it through, but there you go.
Before we postpone, because I think that's probably the right thing to do, I'd like to take a moment and agree with Denny. I think there is a shared responsibility. I think it's implicit in this deed from Martha Duncan, where it says, and the exact words are, the common council or municipal body of the city of Grand shall provide means for the care and improvement of said park. Whether that's all means or not, I guess you could interpret. And in the same paragraph talks about that there shall be the right and duty of said trustees to do such and such and such and such with the means at their command. So clearly Martha Duncan saw a shared responsibility as well, and I think that's written into here in perhaps not perfectly clear manner, but I think there is something here that says that, yeah, the city should take care of this because it's a public park, but because it's not a regular city park, it's the only park governed by a trust deed, that there's another responsibility, and there is also a pot of money there that's been established over the years to assist with that. So I think going back to Denny's point, that there probably is a negotiation appropriate to here to decide what level of care the city should provide and what level of care and what special projects the Duncan Park Trust Fund should be responsible for. And I also agree that, as I said earlier, I don't think this is really right for us to vote on tonight. I think it's been a really interesting discussion that it's a problem that needs to be solved. I think going forward, every year at budget time, this needs to be a topic that we put in our budget as to Duncan Park Board wants to do these things, such as routine maintenance at a certain level, maybe certain other things that need to be done. And so we put a block of money in our budget for that so that Duncan Park Board could do their job to whatever extent we think is our contribution. Because I don't agree that the language here says the city council or the city of Grand Haven is 100% responsible for all care and improvement of the park, given the rest of the paragraph. And I agree that Martha Duncan isn't taking her 30 running cords of wood anymore, but that's all in there, and we can't just pick one line and ignore everything else. I think we got to be intelligent about that. So I would move to postpone if everybody's done chiming in on this, but I think that there's more to it than just waive the fee and pay the bills ourselves. I think that there's a lot more to it than that.
I just want to add just one thing, is that, what was the last words on for the foundation, for the trust down there? What was the last part of it was means for, was it maintenance and upkeep, was it?
I think it's operation and maintenance.
Operations and maintenance, and that's what that fund was for, and people raise money and they know exactly what it was going for. It was operations and I have to agree with Mr. McGinnis, that's what the trust fund is set up for.
And now I think we've come full circle.
So. Absolutely, so we have to take that in consideration when you do that, is that that's what the trust was set up for. People were making donations for that reason, making sure that that park was going to stay the way it is and the way it was going to go. So we just have to make sure that we go in a full circle, that we end up making sure that the foundation, the trust fund that's set up is what we use it for, and that's what it was supposed to be used for, and that's what we're asking for. So I'll go for a postponement, but I just still think that's what the fund was set up for, and that's why it's ran the way it has run, and that's why it's been stayed in perfect shape it has right now today. That's what the people wanted, and that's what Mrs. Duncan wanted to stay in a natural state. And why to have some means, is what she said, you got to have means to do it, and the means is the trust fund that was set up, and that's the part of the means that the city did. That's city, that means all our constituents, that's what we are. We're not just us, it's everybody. So I before we start adding more to it, I think you just have to look and see what that fund was purposely set up for.
But again, that was the funds in 1994. Before that,
all funds today, Denny.
Well, I'd move to postpone until, I think by next meeting we can talk about this intelligently. Do we need more time?
I think you're very intelligent tonight.
Oh, thank you. I sincerely appreciate that.
You could put it on for the next agenda if you're more comfortable, and if you've got specific information you'd like us to gather, I'd be happy to do that between now and then.
I'd postpone until our next meeting.
November 4th.
I don't know if that's going to be enough time, but I think it's a start.
Well, we could make it for a month from now if you prefer.
I think that'll give us more time to sit down with the.
All right, let's go 2 meetings.
Yeah.
Let's postpone it until November, whatever.
18th.
18th.
I'll
See,
second.
I'm right on top of those dates.
Guess we can.
I don't know why we can't do this in 2 weeks. That doesn't sound really that, a month would be complicated.
Okay, why not?
Yeah. Whatever.
I don't care, just so we don't do it tonight.
Think we can do it faster? Then let's do it.
I don't know, how many meetings does it take?
Well, I would suggest that, I think one of us, I think maybe Mayor, you appoint 2 people, yourself and somebody else if you like, or 2 other council members to sit down with some representatives from the Duncan Park Committee. Do you think we can meet with you next week?
I'm open tomorrow afternoon.
There we go, all right. There's an interest in getting it done.
Tomorrow not so good, the next day.
All right, well, let's postpone until our next meeting.
All right, sounds good. I'll second that.
Because we can always postpone again if we say, oh, we're not there.
There we go.
All right, we're going to vote on postponing until the next meeting.
Manetza?
Yes?
Bruger?
Yes.
Scott?
yes.
Fritz?
Repeatedly saying I'd say yes to it this time, but as long as we take considerations, everything.
McCaleb.
All right, yes.
Thank you for listening.
Right, thank you, Roger. Report by city council. Who wants to start?
I'll go for it. Had the opportunity to attend a number of meetings with several council members here. The Forever Grand Haven, city engagement opportunities at St. Pat's and DAW. We've got another one coming up at the community center on the 23rd of October from 10 to 11 at Mary A. White on the 30th of October from 4:30 to 5:30. Also talking about, I think Derek has a presentation on Parks
Five-year
and Rec.
recreation,
There you go. Five-year Parks and Rec program plan, and Jennifer's also presenting on some zoning ordinance updates. So it was great to be there with council, and please come out to those meetings. We haven't had a whole lot of attendance yet. Also had the opportunity with several council members to attend the Ottawa County, I don't know exactly what it was called, but a presentation from our state and federal representatives reporting back to Ottawa County.
Legislative update or something.
Legislative update, yeah. And I think City of Grand Haven did a great job of letting our local representative, state representative Jim Lilly, know that we are opposed to dredging, and we want him to continue to fight on the seasonal rental and focus on local control rather than Lansing taking over. And then finally, I had the opportunity to, with Derek and Linda, host the seniors from Central School in a mock council session this past week on Tuesday. We debated chickens and how many chickens should be allowed in the backyard of residents' homes, and it was a 4-to-1 vote. They agreed with council. So our youth are on the same page with us, or we're on the same page with youth, I'm not sure. But they had a great time, said they want to come back, and I think that was a fun opportunity to engage with our seniors. That's all I got.
Yeah, and in that legislative update also, we brought up, I think all of us did, about the, see if we get the legislature to take a look at the lead and copper rule and how that might be phased in a little bit more slowly, a little bit less financial burden on the ratepayers for the water system. Not that I'm really expecting them to do anything with that, but we made it pretty clear that we were unhappy with how that's being implemented. I attended a planning commission meeting. They had a full schedule of planning and case issues. And toward the end of that, they also talked about the medical marijuana rules and regulations that they're working on for the zoning ordinance. It sounds like they're moving right along. They've established a lot of ideas which can go into ordinance form, and I think that they'll probably be having a public hearing on that yet this year, I would hope. Ryan's out there kind of smiling and nodding a little bit. Ryan's also on the planning commission. So impressed that they're getting somewhere with that. It's a complex issue, and it's something that they've been very careful about. I attended the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission Policy Committee meeting, which is our MPO. And the policy committee is usually kind of a rubber stamp type committee where technical committee makes recommendations, policy committee says yes. We had a pretty good discussion at the end of it, and Mayor Michaela was there as well. We kind of offline after the meeting ended with a couple of other parties up there that talking about harbor transit and Muskegon area transit system kind of getting together and doing some cross-border moving of people. Something that's been talked about for a long, long time. It came up again at our last harbor transit meeting that, we've been talking about this for at least 4 or 5 years and have gotten nowhere. And I think that there's people on both sides of this county divide who would like to have it happen, but nobody can seem to figure out how to even have that conversation. So hopefully that we can elevate this a little bit and get a conversation going that really takes us to an agreement. So anyway, that's what I've got.
I'm going to go back to the Duncan Park thing for a second here. And the fund agreement with the park and with the board, and that was Duncan was in the 14th day of June in 1994. Ed Leicester was the one that had signed on it. And the Duncan Park Commission, in furtherance of its purposes and functions, has determined that it would serve its best interest to create a designated fund within the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation. And it goes on, it says all that stuff on there. And then section 4.01, it says use of the fund is for the purpose and use of the Duncan Park Fund shall be to provide funds for the maintenance and operation of Duncan Park. Just want that all to be remembered, what that fund was set up for and why. That when we do our negotiations, that we make sure that we take that in consideration. Other than that, Noah, they say, is on the way.
All right. My snowshoes are ready.
And colors are changing, weather's all set, so hope to stay dry.
Will be good. Okay, well, yep, went to a legislative session and forum. Those are always interesting, and hear what our legislators have to say and be able to get our concerns out there on a face-to-face basis. Same with the MPO. I just asked an innocent question, which kind of opened a huge can of worms.
That'll teach you.
Pardon?
That'll teach you.
But anyway, so yeah, I went in Denny's place to make trouble. So I succeeded, but I think it's. I know our employers are always, that one of the big issues is transportation for their employees, and it just seems like a no-brainer if Muskegon has the mats and we have our Harbor Transit, that somehow or other those two could link up, get people in Muskegon down here and back home again. But it's something we've talked about for as long as I can remember. I used to be in Bob's position on the Harbor Transit Board, and wondered why we couldn't get that done. And we've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it, and I think maybe it's time to get everybody together in one place and say, let's move forward on this. It's a no-brainer. It's kind of like, when Harbor Transit didn't used to be able to go across Robbins Road, and your dialysis patients had to be dropped off on the north side of Robbins Road because they couldn't cross to the south side of Robbins Road. Things like that just don't make sense to people, and that's good because it doesn't make sense. So we should be able to figure these things out. Other than that, it's been a good week, and I'm sure that we can sit down and come to an agreement on this Duncan Park question. But it's interesting how you start peeling away the layers of the onion, and it becomes things that seem crystal clear suddenly are kind of muddy. So we'll put everything together and come up with hopefully a solution in a short period of time. So that's it for me. So city manager's report.
All I wanted to present tonight is that on Halloween night at the depot, we'll have several tables set up, and if any council members are interested in coming down and participating, maybe dressing up, the more the merrier. We'd love to put you behind a table, scaring kids.
We just go like this, we can scare them.
Yeah, we'll go as council people.
It's scary enough. They don't even want to come see us here.
We kind of changed things up a little bit. We started this out doing it at Lakeshore Middle School for a couple of years because of weather. We had a couple of years of really bad weather, so we thought, well, let's give an indoor opportunity. We moved it from Lakeshore to Community Center a few years later. We've done it there for 3 years now, from 6 to 8 after the downtown's done. This year we decided to move it down to the depot and do it concurrently with the downtown, so it's going to be from 4 to 5:30 inside the depot. It'll be a lot of fun.
What time?
4 o'clock till 5:30 p.m.
It's a great opportunity for lots of people to come out and see the depot. So,
and you can
on down.
let Ashley know if you want to participate, because we'll want to reserve a table for you, because we're getting some significant interest. I think we're going to have a pretty full building. If people are catching on, they might be able to stand inside instead of outside. So you might want to get that space reserved tomorrow. If you'd like to come down, just let us know. We'll make sure you got a spot.
Especially if Mike's right and it snows.
You can always make it home at 5:30 to, a lot of the kids don't come out in the neighborhoods till 5:30 or 6. So you could do this and still make it home and hand out candy at home.
How true that is, I'm just a few blocks away, and I can tell the difference when it's done downtown, that they start wandering through my neighborhood.
Well, the word's out, you got the good stuff on Clinton.
Oh, yeah, the big candy
Put that in the
bars.
Tribune. That's all I have, Your Honor.
All right, general business, call the audience. I see Mike's here.
Mike Weaver, 637 Lake Avenue. Couple quick questions. Snow fencing still not up on the beach. We're on our third major storm with 40 to 50 mile an hour winds. The crew's been there pretty much every day. It's not always actually moving equipment, but all the sand has really been blowing, and I'm curious why we haven't gotten our snow fencing up yet, especially with the kind of storms we've had. Is there an answer to that? And are they not putting it up this year?
I'm sure they will. I don't know.
You're sure? How about the city manager?
Snow fence. I mean,
Yeah,
some years
they
it
typically
goes up
don't get
really
it up
early
till pretty
and-
late October, because like
Yeah.
this last weekend, we had some beautiful weather and people like getting down there, so we actually are kind of proud that we hold off a little later. The state park tends to put theirs up week after Labor Day, and people aren't able to use the beach as much, so the guys try to straddle that as best they can and get it down there, but it is going up. There's no plan not to put it up.
But
I
it's,
didn't-
sometimes people complain when it's up too early.
Well,
so it's
I know, but
hard
when
to
we're
keep
having these
everybody
kind of
happy.
storms and this kind of high water,
Right.
I'd encourage y'all tomorrow, and then the next day after the storm settles, drive down there, take a really good look at how much of the, and you have to remember, it's the fine powder, the stuff that we were at one time a top 10 beach for. That's the stuff that blows. The stuff left behind is gravelly. So
Yeah.
if that's what we want to be left with, let's do what we're doing.
Called desert
Let's
seed.
get ahead of this for a change. It's important. I don't think you realize just how important that is. So anyways, that's one. Two, I have not heard much going on Harbor Island. I've been paying attention to that boat launch. For the very first time with my truck, I didn't dare drive into the landing area this past week. I'm not hearing much, I'm not seeing much in the papers. Is there a plan being put in place for Harbor Island, the launch ramp, and all the roads that are under? Because I haven't seen, I've asked other people, and they don't know anything either. So I'm just curious where we stand on that.
I don't know, water is high.
Water's high.
Water is high.
Yeah, that's good. We all get that. But you're the council, there's a city manager. That's a huge asset that's underwater.
Yeah.
Are you waiting for the heavens to dry it up, or is there a plan that's getting put together?
No, I'm not gonna repeat that.
What's that?
Just go ahead, Pat, you can.
Yeah, we
take
know
these
that
notes.
the-
This is
the-
council
Something
comments, I mean, it's in comments from public right now.
I'm happy to comment that areas are underwater, then they're not underwater, then they are. The water's been fluctuating quite a bit all summer, and it's difficult to get in and get our arms around exactly the extent of the damage and what the corrective actions need to be. So we're not out there trying to drain water or pump water. We have cleared up the road areas, and we invested quite a bit, as you'll remember, in getting some of those big bags alongside Harbor Island Drive so that hauls could, and that was really an exercise in futility because they're mostly underwater there. So, we're doing what we can as an interim measure. Then we'll be looking at it when the waters do go down. If they stay up real high next year, there's not much we can do until the waters go down. We're not going to build dikes around the whole island and try to pump it out. We're going to wait until the waters go down and then assess the damage and recommend appropriate measures.
The water is right up to the road. It's, you can't stop it. It is,
Well, you guys paid for a report probably, 3 to 5 years ago that told you this was coming. Y'all saw that. So you've got a report. You knew this was coming. I guess I'm kind of curious. So far, I'm not hearing anything I'm very impressed with.
Perhaps you could be a little more clear. What report was paid for about water coming up?
About all the areas that as water came up, and they said it's not if, it's when. And they presented it out at the airport. And there was pictures. I'll find them for you, Pat. I think you were there. I think you were paying attention to it. But it said we were going to see something like this. And so I guess my question is, I don't think you should keep waiting. I'd like to start seeing you guys put some plans together. I just think it's important. You can't just ignore this thing. I mean, it's across the board. Your docks are within inches of being underwater. You just built a $4 million park that the water's going over the top. You know, you've got Harbor Island that is, I can tell you that launch ramp has been under the entire summer.
Yeah, we know that, Mike.
But where's the leadership? Where's the, okay, let's put our plan together? Or, I mean, are you seriously crossing your fingers and waiting for the water to go down?
You know, there is a possibility this could be the new low water mark. We don't know. So to spend a lot of money and a lot of time and effort is futile and a waste of effort. You know, you do want to wait until you do know what the damage is and you can take steps. Right now we can't take steps and we'd only be guessing at what corrective measures to take. So the crews are plenty busy taking care of things and doing the best they can, but that lake, when it comes up and that river comes up, we're not going to be able to control it or fix it. We're just going to have to react to the damage. There's very little proactively we're able to do.
Well, they raised the pier. I'm guessing you can raise the land up in the areas that are critical. At the very least, start thinking about it. Start talking about it. And then, you know, I'd like to see that snow fencing up this coming week before the next storm comes. There's houses
like
going
I said,
in.
Mike, if we put the snow fence up too early, people complain that the snow fences are up too early. If it's not up yet, people complain because the snow fences aren't up yet.
You give me a
It's hard
call.
to-
You
it's
drive
hard to
by the
win
beach
that.
tomorrow.
Right.
Take a look.
I
You give
go
me a
by
call and
there-
tell me what
I go
you
by
think.
there about every day.
Is this up for debate that we're going to just ignore these things?
No, I'm just telling
Okay,
you.
I'm just
You
kind of
put it up
curious.
early, they complain it's up early.
Here, this is getting interesting now.
Right.
Because you don't have a plan, is what it sounds like. So, okay. Anyways, in regards to the Duncan Park, I'm just throwing this in. $10,000 a year is a bargain to take care of that place. I watched, and I live right around the corner. Some of the people I've seen older gentlemen pushing mowers to take care of that park. The city has all the equipment in the world to do it right and do it fast and get it done. So I would encourage you to stay on task there. The 10 grand is not bad. The fact that they have some money set aside for other things and to assist is one thing. But 10 grand a year for basic maintenance is not something this city should shirk. Okay? Thank you very much.
All right.
And especially, by the way, you spent $6,200 to assure that 5 homes on Highland Drive are going to have perfect views going forward. You can scrape up 10 grand to take care of the Duncan's Woods. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we will adjourn until next time.